Okay, I always record these calls so that for people that miss them, they can come back and check the recording later. So welcome to my Mondays Ask Me Anything. Thanks to everybody for your patience with my little scheduling snafu. My first campaign didn't go out for the 11 o'clock call, so I bumped it to 11:30. But if you have a question, either jump in chat or turn yourself live if you can, either audio or video, and let me know what questions you have because I'm happy to help.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. There.
Oh, great. Well, glad to be here. I found you on Lewis House's
Oh
uh, broadcast, his Inner Circle I'm part of.
yeah.
So great information.
Good.
My question is, if you're just starting out and trying to get, your legalities together, what would be a good place to start or a good resource? I know one size doesn't quite fit all, but is there like a template I could kind of pull the generalities from, or is this something that I need to go to a lawyer to get put together, or?
Good question. So it's a big question. There's a lot to unpack there. Couple things. So one, obviously, I can't give legal advice on these calls. I can give legal information. I can support people the best way I can. But can I ask you a bit about your business? What are you up to? What is your specific business?
I do digital design, 2D, 3D motion graphics, animation,
Oh, wow.
and digital design.
Okay, awesome. So in that training that I shared with Lewis House's group, we walked through, I'm pretty sure that I walked through what I call my 5-bucket framework for business protection, right?
Yeah.
So, so in that training, and are you part of his inner circle?
Yes. Yeah. So I could go back and rewatch it.
You go back and rewatch it. So I talk about the areas to look at, right? And the first one is business structure. So my first question for anybody is, do you have a business entity set up? Right.
Yeah. Right now, I'm wanting to switch it to an LLC, but right now I'm a sole proprietor.
Okay. And where are you based?
Houston, Texas.
Okay, got it. So check into that. It's often less expensive than people think it is except for a few states, like forming an LLC in California or New York is more expensive than other states, but most states it's surprisingly inexpensive to go ahead and get the business entity set up. So just check.
Now, with something like that, with something like that, do I have to go through the process of like minutes or?
With an LLC, so you do have some what's called corporate governance requirements, right?
Yeah.
And usually that is around filing an annual report with the state to keep your records current and let them know you're still actively engaged in business. Outside of that, I do recommend that people start their own little, you can call it your corporate binder, even if it's an LLC, where you track important things. So even if you're a single member LLC, if you're making a big financial decision, you're investing in a piece of equipment, you're doing anything that if you were to have a business partner you would talk about, you would probably write some notes down about, like just record that stuff. Put the date on the, the document that is essentially your meeting minutes, note what decisions you've made. If you're deciding to pay yourself out of your LLC bank accounts, a certain amount each month, or that is flexible, right? You just write that stuff down. What it does is it helps you at the end of the year, especially when you go to your accountant to, deal with all of the taxes and the financial scenarios, that you've basically got a track record. You don't have to go back and recreate it, right? So just having a corporate book in advance, and then also having a place where you put all of your business receipts, you track your business income. It's a good habit to get in to have your books in order. But you should be doing that anyways, even if you were a sole proprietor, right? Yeah. There's not much difference from the standpoint of running a good business. You just do it, with a little bit more formality, and in the context of an LLC, you still have quite a bit of flexibility in the way that you manage and run your business. So, my recommendation always is whatever business people set up, but especially for LLCs where, there's a lot of flexibility, but you're still making really important decisions about your business, that just record it all, put notes down, put the date down that you made certain decisions, and just record it all. But that's the first place, regardless of who I talk to, that's the first place that I start. And I want to pause for a minute and welcome. We have both Stacy and Larissa with us on the call. So I'm just answering a question, ladies, that Dawn asked, which was a great question about how do you get started with legal support in your business? Do you have to go to an attorney to get it all done? Where do you look? And Dawn, you said you're in like graphic design too, and 3D design.
Yeah.
Who are your clients? Who are you mostly working with?
Right now I'm working with a lot of small businesses and solopreneurs that are looking to get their branding and marketing started. But I'm eventually looking to level up to more medium and larger size companies that are looking, their media department and creative department.
Okay. So, the next place I would look, once we've talked about bucket one and business entity setup, is, and this is where I spend a lot of time with my clients, is business contracts, right? And basically, when you're considering like, where should I start? Where should I put some money if you're investing in a little bit of legal support in your business? The key is really getting a good basic client services agreement in place. So the phrase that I use is protect your moneymaker. Whatever you are doing the most of that's making the most money in your business, like be sure that you have a contract around that, especially when it comes to client services. So, that would be one of the first place that I'd look for you, depending on, I don't know if you've already got that in place. The key when you're asking the question of like, can I get a template? Do I have to hire an attorney for this? The key is that you really want your contract, and welcome Emma, good to see you here again. You really want your contract to match your scenario. So it does you very little good in business, and I see this all the time. People will borrow somebody else's contract. It's not drafted for their business. It's not a fit necessarily for the way that they engage their clients. And, using somebody else's contracts or just having one that doesn't fit your scenario can cause more harm than good. And so I've reviewed contracts. There was a woman in Florida who wanted me to look at a contract. I looked at the language. It turns out she'd borrowed it from a friend. Didn't know that the dispute resolution clause said that if there was a dispute with a client, she'd have to litigate it in California. Right? I mean, people just, it happens. And this is what happens when, even if you're well-intentioned and a friend's well-intentioned and they say, here, use mine. The benefit of having an attorney, if you can afford one, is that they can look at it through the eyes of what are your goals, what's best for you, what are you really trying to accomplish with this contract. Well-written contracts are worth their money in business all day long if they do some things right for you. And the things that I like to see a well-written contract do is, one, be really clear about what's happening between the parties. Two, help educate the client. You can use a contract to help enforce really good business policies, to be another reinforcement of each of your client touch points that is consistent in its language. So for example, somebody sees your marketing copy and then they have a sales conversation with you, and then you engage them and have a client services agreement in place. Like, you want all of those touch points to be very consistent, and your contract should be the continuation of that conversation, right? And should really help to continue to educate your clients, reinforce your business policies and the things that you've already said through a lot of your language. So a contract done and well really supports your business in a variety of ways. And then, it also can really minimize the amount of effort on the back end. If something goes wrong, if a client misunderstands something, in your instance, in the creative world, there's a lot of scope creep issues, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure that you've experienced clients coming back and saying, oh, hey, I wanted it this way, or I need you to do this now, or whatever. And that wasn't anticipated in the original engagement. And so you have to deal with that in some way. A well-written contract can protect you from scope creep.
Yeah.
So there's, the The trade-off is that, yes, you can start by piecing together your own stuff. And then as you grow, what you'll experience is that that usually at some point becomes insufficient because you have problems come up or you have certain client experiences that basically require that you put a more solid contract in place that helps you in those ways moving forward. So it's really a trade-off, you know, and I understand that clients can't always address all of their legal needs up front. So that's why I try to help them stair step and map that path and figure out what can they do, where should they allocate resources first, right? So one, I'd say business entity, and then also protect your moneymaker, get a good client services agreement in place. If you're doing a lot of online advertising, are you building a database? Like, do you have a freebie or an opt-in? Are you trying to grow a list?
Yeah.
You want to make sure that in the online space you're protected, right? So in the online world, if you're doing those activities, you certainly want a privacy policy because you're collecting data.
Yeah.
If you're sharing advice or sharing information, sharing your visuals, sharing what you do or tips, you know, etc. for clients, you want a website terms and conditions to protect the way that you share information and to protect the intellectual property that you share online. If you're selling information or selling services and you've got an online sales funnel, then you want terms of purchase in place specific for that sale. And it largely depends on what you're selling, about how you'd approach that. But it's, you know, there's a variety of things to look at, even in the contracts bucket, which is bucket number 2 in that training that you went through. So you really just have to think, like, where's the focus in your business? What do I have resources right now to do? Where can I start that would take care of an important piece? And then how can I plan to address the other pieces, you know, as I grow?
Great.
Is that helpful?
No, very helpful. Very helpful. I appreciate that so much, Heather.
Yeah, absolutely. But I would say revisit that training anytime, because here's the thing about that framework, the 5-bucket framework that I go through, is applicable at every stage of business. Do you have this? Do you have, right? You can revisit each of those buckets because, as you know, business is not static. Like, you evolve, your business evolves, your business legal needs evolve as well. So you can revisit that same framework anytime to analyze, like, do I have a new or recurring need in this specific area? Do I need something else in place here?
Now, just one more little thing to add to that. Now, would you suggest, I'm sure you would suggest, if I do get an attorney to help me draft, say, my contract and stuff, it would be best to find somebody that's kind of familiar with my niche, or as opposed to just a general.
That's right. That's right. If you can find an attorney who has a lot of experience working with creatives, what it's going to do is it's going to save you time and save you money, because you're working with somebody who's already drafted quite a few agreements for people in that space. And what it means is that they're not learning on your dollar and creating probably a contract from the ground up. They will have already created provisions and sample agreements that apply to very similar people in the creative space. So yes, if you can find a referral, and the best way to do that is reach out to colleagues in your space that you know, and especially those that might be a step or 2 ahead of you in business, and find out who have they worked with. And if it's somebody local, great. Like, I love the idea of people being able to engage attorneys locally, but sometimes that's a problem. And like, I end up working with people around the world because of that, because they want to find somebody, especially in the online space, which, you know, I tend to focus on. So, you know, there's a range of people out there, but absolutely, I would recommend that in the legal world, you find somebody who works specifically with creatives. Where are you based? I mean, I'm happy to reach out and try to get referrals for you.
I'm here in Houston, Texas.
Houston. Okay. I know you said Texas. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, Houston.
Okay. Because I could try to reach out and get referrals or do some searches for you, but you're also welcome to just drop me an email at info@legalwebsitewarrior.com if you want to remind me to do that.
I sure appreciate that, Heather. And again, you've been very, very helpful.
Good, absolutely. Well, I'm happy to support you. And, you know, I would say that for that client services agreement, that's really key. If you needed help with like online protection, right, I could certainly help with that. So just be in touch if I can support you in any other ways.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome. Great to connect with you, Dawn. All right. So it looks like, Emma, I know you raised your hand. You have a quick question today. Anybody else jump in? You're welcome to use the chat. You're welcome to just unmute.
Yes, I
Great
do.
questions. Hi, Emma.
Um, Hi. We've talked about, you've given us contracts for affiliates, and I've got 2 podcasts. And, I do say, I haven't elaborated a whole lot on verbiage, but there's a couple of sentences in there saying that, as you agree to be a guest, that the content can be used as I wish in different places, blah, blah, blah. Is that enough to say? Or do I need more? Yeah, I know you're probably going to say more.
Good question. Yeah, there's, I would say it depends, right? There is no one size fits all in the legal scenario because one, maybe it's enough to say if there are no problems with that content or that guest. And then if it becomes a problematic scenario, then I would say that's not enough to say, right? So really, when you're talking about, like in your instance, conducting interviews, is it just an interview release form? What is it? Where is that language embedded? Where do you have that?
It's just in my invitation letter with
Got it.
instruction. Yeah.
Got it.
So
So I'd want to see them. Yeah, I'd want to see them sign something formally because there's a lot of intellectual property rights that go along with releasing that content, So what I'm going to do, Emma, and it's just because I would not be doing a service for you if I didn't at least point you in this direction as a resource. I'm going to give you a link. I've got a portion of my online store has individual templates, and I've got a template specifically for interviews. It's an interview release form. And for people that are doing interviews like day in and day out in their business, and that's a large part of how they create content, and then they're going to either bundle that content or use it other places or use it in their marketing material. I highly recommend that you have a well-drafted interview release form. So let me just drop this link here for you. You'll find it in my individual templates portion of my website. So I'm just going to grab this link. Go here and just look for the interview release form. That'll save you a lot of time and hassle trying to come up with your own. And it'll give you good coverage for getting the release language, having it be as straightforward as possible, but also making sure that people understand you get to use the content, for any commercial purpose in your business.
Okay. Oh, great. Yeah. That's terrific.
Yeah. Good question, though. You're thinking about the right things. That's a great question. So good call.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. All right. Any other questions? Stacy, Jay, welcome, Jay, Larissa, or Larissa. I'm not sure how you say your name. I think it's Larissa. And then I see Tiffany as well. Just feel free to unmute yourself. You're welcome to Tiffany. I was late too. I see your comment in the chat. So the funny thing is that I apologize. This email reminder was supposed to go out for an 11 o'clock start, and somehow my campaign failed and nothing got sent. And so I ran it again for 11:30, and I'm glad that I did because we can now have a little conversation. So I know you just got your email. Yes. Well, technology. I have a love-hate relationship with technology. When it works, it's brilliant. And then sometimes, like over the weekend, my work laptop totally died. Like I was in the middle of something and I got the dreaded question mark blinking on a folder. Oh my gosh, it's the worst thing when you own a Mac. So yes, that was the end of my work laptop. So I'm on my desktop, which is great. I've got a backup, but that little laptop was literally my workhorse for the last 9 years. So I apparently, got all of the life out of it that I possibly could. But so happy to see you guys, even though we're all late. Pop into the chat or just unmute yourself if you have a question. I'd love to serve you and support you and provide resources or information.
Hi, this is Larissa.
Hi, Larissa. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Sorry I didn't get to meet you at the JVology event. I hope to get there eventually, but I'm in the group with you. So
Absolutely. Well, I recognized your name, so I figured that must be it. So Larissa, where are you based?
I'm in Toronto, Ontario.
Oh, excellent. Well, how are you doing?
I'm good, and I'm really loving I listened to the recordings of the last 2 calls, and I'm finding it really valuable, so I'm excited to be on live today.
Well, thank you. I so appreciate that feedback. How can I help you?
Well, I work in the mindset, in the realm of mindset and working with emotions and the mind and all that kind of thing. And so I was wondering if you could give any direction about how to best manage risk around, not overstepping regulations around, psychotherapy and counseling and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, absolutely. So great question, first of all. And there's a lot of folks, and I assume, Larissa, I'll ask you this. I assume your work crosses borders.
What do you mean by that?
Meaning that you probably work with clients that are in the US or around
Yes.
the world.
Yeah.
Yes.
Country borders. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and and it's important for people to understand that in the US, right, the FTC, which is essentially the online watchdog from a consumer protection standpoint, there's the two really kind of hot areas that they watch are around health and wellness and financial claims, right? So there are certain disclaimers that people should have in place, particularly if they're anywhere near those areas: health and wellness, doing things with people's mental health, physical health, nutrition, etc. Larissa, can you tell me a little bit about your unique either approach or what services you offer? What are you doing through your business?
I'm a business coach, and I work with my clients around their limiting beliefs, around taking action in their business, but I also do stuff around mindset around their money as well. And
okay, so you touch
so
on both.
basically, yeah, taking away the resistance to taking action in their business, being visible, and around their money as well.
Got it. Okay. All right. No, that's good to know. So you're a business coach, you work on mindset that has to do with limiting beliefs and also brings in the money conversation. Yeah. So I would definitely recommend that you have disclaimers that apply both to the medical well-being side as well as the financial side. So from the FTC standpoint, like any work that's being done with other people around finances, increasing sales, increasing earnings, increasing income, like any of that kind of conversation, the FTC wants to see a separate earnings, what's called an earnings and income disclaimer, posted on your site, right? And the reason being is just that there's so many offers out in the online marketplace that have to do with increasing income, increasing sales, right? And it's really the hook of like trying to get people to buy into a lot of programs. And the FTC, really cracks down on any type of get rich quick schemes or language around that, the claims are too big, it's too much boasting around what the result is going to be financially. And so I just, as a standard course for anybody that's involved in the money conversation, financial conversations, like just have an income and earning disclaimer on your site that says any examples that I provide, any client testimonials about their results from working with me are not claims or promises that you're going to have the same result. And it's really important just from the standpoint that we don't say something even inadvertently that sets somebody up to have a false idea in their mind about what they're going to achieve. And that really is the basis of most risk, is that it really depends on what's in the recipient's mind, what's in the client's mind. And same thing around like health and medical. Does somebody think that they're getting psychological services or psychiatry or medical support, and whether intentionally or unintentionally, through some provider that works on mindset or works on health? And so the reality is that you cannot be too clear, both in your sales language, your marketing language, your preliminary conversations with clients, your languaging on your website, and however you advertise, right? That, you're not engaged in medical services, you do a lot of mindset work, but you're not a psychiatrist or psychologist, etc., right? So it's about being really clear up front about what you're not, so that people don't have the false expectation or the false experience of thinking that you're providing something that you're absolutely not providing. So, I guess my point is that you absolutely cannot be too clear, not only in your contracts, but also just in your general languaging. And a lot of that takes place up front when you're talking with clients. And, you don't have to go overboard, but you can just simply build into your conversations. Like, yeah, I do a lot of mindset work. As you know, I'm not a psychologist, not a psychiatrist. For people that need professional support, they need to go elsewhere, that kind of thing, where you're just really above board with it. And so that's my best advice. But then, you do specifically want to have your disclaimers built in the right way in your website. I don't know, what your online presence looks like, or if you've already got legal terms in place for that, but a lot of your disclaimers, which that would be a disclaimer saying, I don't do this, you can't use my services in this way, etc., would be built into both your website terms and conditions and your terms of purchase. If you're selling digital information, pre-recorded courses, you have an online sales funnel that involves your services or your expertise in some way, you'd want the disclaimers built in there. And a lot of times, depending on what people are doing, but particularly in the health and nutrition world, you're kind of one step removed from some of the riskiest areas, but health and nutrition, where people are working with bodies and working with people's eating and their workout schedule, or like their physical bodies and also what they're eating, can have a lot of risk, and especially crossing not only country borders but state borders, because in the United States, people that are working in nutrition, there's a lot of health coaches that will talk about nutrition and talk about that kind of stuff, and they actually cannot be giving nutrition advice one-on-one in certain states. That's all state regulated. So it is a tricky landscape, and you're asking the right questions because you don't want to be doing something. That's why I'm glad to know that you're a business coach and it's mostly mindset, and you're not, for example, giving like nutrition advice and stuff, because you'd really want to cut down on the one-on-one work that you do in that scenario. But for you, I would just say having solid disclaimers, making sure that in your languaging, you're just really above board about what people are receiving, and that you're not, a licensed professional. You're not a psychologist or psychiatrist, and that's definitely not the services they're receiving.
Okay, and just a quick detail about this. In terms of the website disclaimer, obviously I would create like a page that you can go to that outlines all those things, but where would you kind of put that in the footer of each of the web pages, or how would you create access to those terms and conditions?
Yeah, so for your legal documents, great question. And there's, across the board, the goal for any legal documents that you have on your site is what's called achieving constructive notice. You want somebody to actively acknowledge, like both have notice and acknowledge that those terms exist, especially if they're engaging you for services. It's a little bit less critical if they're just visiting your site, although it's still relevant, because if they visit your site and they consume information and they go make a decision based on that information, right, there's some liability there. So this is partly why even for general visitors of websites, you see all the cookies consent, like all the pop-up notices about like, here's our website terms and conditions and our privacy policy. And you have to like check the box or agree to it before that little notice goes away. So that's solely for the purpose of achieving constructive consent, constructive notice, that somebody saw and are aware of the fact that legal terms apply to their visit of your website. And then as far as where to post those, yes, you're right that most standard in the industry is having footer links for each of your legal documents, right? So you've got website terms and conditions, you have a privacy policy, you have terms of purchase in place for anything that you're selling. And then you have a separate link for earnings and income disclaimer, right? And earnings and income disclaimer should be posted separately. That's the way that the FTC likes to see it. But you also can include that language in your website terms and conditions. But that's where the links are going to show up, but just having the links there doesn't achieve constructive notice, right? So that's where having the pop-up, having additional functionality that actually gets people to acknowledge and consent that they are aware that those terms apply is much, much better from a legal perspective.
Thank you so much. That's really helpful.
Yes, absolutely. Well, in all of this, when I go through, because, one of the main things that I do for people in business is help them get their online business protected, right? We go through all of this. We walk through this to look at what their business activities are online and assess their whole online platform. Where does all their content live? Sometimes it's just on their website. Sometimes it's in a membership site, right? Sometimes it's in various locations, and you have to be strategic about how those terms and conditions show up across all of those locations. So if you have any questions about that, and I don't know like what level I haven't checked out like your online business presence and, where all you show up online, but you might check out, and I'd be happy even for others on the call, just because this is what I do and it's how I help people in business. I will also drop the link. I've dropped the link already to my individual templates, but the link to my bundles, which includes, one of my bundles is the website protection package. Even if you walk through what's in the package, you'll get a really good sense of how to fully protect an online business. So I'm just going to put that link in there too. You'll see it's my bundles page. But that'll give you a really good sense of what's included and how you should be thinking about your online business from the standpoint of protection. And let's see, Tiffany. Absolutely. If you have a question, and thank you, Larissa. Great questions today, by the way, you guys. Larissa, was there anything else for you?
I'm good for now. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Well, great to connect with you.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions? Tiffany, if you've got one, now is the time to go. Otherwise, people can either raise their hand, pop into the chat, or just unmute themselves.
Hi.
Hi, Tiffany. How are you?
How are you?
Good.
I'm glad Larissa asked that question, because when you mentioned the income and earnings disclaimer, that was really helpful for me, because I'm online tutorials and stuff like that. So
yes, excellent. So tell me, what's your business? What do you do?
well, funnily enough, I actually have a custom cake pop business, but I'm trying to scale my business right now. So I'm actually working on a membership site, because I've been teaching tutorials and classes and private Facebook groups, but I'm realizing that it's not very practical for me to have to manage. So I actually found you through Bushra, and I really liked your video because I liked how straight to the point you were.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate that feedback. I love what you do. Holy cow. Custom cake pops sound amazing, especially now since we can't go get them.
But a lot of this is so new and so overwhelming for me, and I feel like really stupid because I'm just trying to navigate it and make sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yes. And are you talking about just kind of transitioning into the online world?
Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, no, you're not stupid. It's a conundrum for everybody. I mean, what I tell people about the online world is it's the Wild West of business. So don't feel crazy or stupid. Like, there's a lot there. And there's also massive opportunity, which is what makes it exciting. And the pace of business can go really, really quickly, as you know. But it's also why I really care about being in the conversation about how to do business the right way online, because some people, if you're in the circumstances of not knowing what you don't know, it's really easy also to overstep and get in trouble, especially from the standpoint of data collection and, depending on what you do in your business, sharing information. So what my commitment is to educating first, so that people understand that landscape first, and then they can make decisions for themselves in their business that are just better business decisions. So that's one thing that the traditional legal model just doesn't do well.
Not out there in the open. So I'm glad that people like you are actually informing people.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to have you here. So what questions do you have that I can help you with?
I have two questions. One of them is that I'm really struggling because I'm trying to launch my membership site quickly.
Yeah. What membership have you chosen a platform? What are you using?
Yes, and I've already started kind of building it on there. It's called Mighty Networks.
Oh, okay. I think I've heard of them.
Yeah, I think they're fairly new.
Yeah.
I'm just struggling because I'm really just trying to make sure that the sites that I'm using are already GDPR compliant.
Yes.
And they do have a little bit of information about it, but it's very vague. And I was realizing just now, actually, when you're talking to Larissa, that from my end, on the host end, I don't see a place for me to put a footer at the bottom of my membership.
To embed your own terms and conditions. Okay, let me look really quick. I just jumped on their site. I'd be really surprised if they don't have that. The reason I'm saying that is because if they are
their own terms and conditions, but obviously mine would be different, I feel like, because
right.
Different than I'm giving my
totally. And they're going to basically have terms of use in place from two perspectives. One, from the course creators, right? So somebody like yourself using the platform to be able to use it, you've probably signed off on some terms. And then, and mostly those terms, if they're like others in the marketplace, they're going to allow you to use the platform subject to certain conditions, but they're not going to own your IP. They're not going to have control of your data or information. Like, they may get to shut you down or remove it if you violate certain of their rules, but you know, most of these sites look fairly similar about how they function and how they are used. Without going and looking at them, I mean, my best guess is that they have, you know, terms of use that would apply both to the content creators as well as end users who come and use that platform to consume the content, right? But you're right that you should have your own terms in place. And what I would do is I would reach out. Do they have a help desk or just a helpline?
Yeah, and I was thinking about doing that because right now my only plan that I kind of had lined up was that I was working on a post that has like my house rules for the membership site, and I'm going to put the link, like additional terms and conditions, like that link in the rules that, you know, that's where my members have to start. And without, that's not necessarily, like you were saying, Clarissa, like it, you know, right.
Doesn't necessarily achieve that consent, in part because they've already purchased by the time they're being exposed to that information, right?
So I don't know if I can add it to my landing page. Like, I know they have it so I can set up a landing page, and I just...
Yeah. Well, and if you have, I mean, you're welcome to share it with me or drop me an email and I can help you do a quick audit of what you're looking at. But a couple things I'd think about is, and let me ask you really quick, do you have your own website separate from this, or is this your online website for now?
No, I do have an official website, and it's just a WordPress site.
Yep.
About, but I know that I need to put, like right now I know that I have a cookie pop up on that, and that's it. And it's just super basic. Like, it's not fancy.
Yeah, no, that's okay. It doesn't need to be fancy, because the thing that often, one way that people can use their, like I have Teachable, you know, there's a lot of different ones out there. Mighty Networks, I'm assuming, is going to have a lot of the same functionality. I'd contact their help desk and find out how to create custom links in the footer. They usually will have a way that they can do that pretty easily. I'm surprised it's not built into the functionality, but you should just ask them about that. Just say, where is the location for me to post my own terms and conditions, right? And you should be able to embed several links because you want your terms and conditions separate from your privacy policy. Your terms of purchase, that's the terms that cover the sale. They show up a little bit differently. They don't show up down in that footer menu because people get confused between website terms and conditions and terms of purchase, right? Understandably. But the terms of purchase are just specific to the sale. They're specific to what is purchased, whereas the website terms and conditions are going to be whatever information through your website you make generally available that somebody doesn't have to purchase, somebody doesn't have to necessarily like opt in to get access to. Your website terms and conditions covers all of that. And in many instances, that's a lot of information as well. So, for people that already have a website set up, an easy way to do this is if you've got, and WordPress is the most, you know, widely used platform out there for websites, you would just post your legal terms, right? Your website terms and conditions on their own page, put them in your footer menu. You've got a link for that, as well as your privacy policy. And you can use those same hyperlinks over in your membership site so that if somebody clicks through to your terms from your membership site, they're covered by the same terms and conditions that you protect your other online presence with, your other website with. From a user experience, the only question that I'd have is I'd have that open in a new window so that it doesn't take them away from the membership site. And on that page, I'd get rid of all of your other functionality. I'd get rid of your upper menu. I'd get rid of any sidebars so that literally all they're taken to is a white page with your legal terms in black print. That's it. That's all they want to see. If they took the time to click through to that, you don't want to divert them off of that. Does that make sense? So that from a user experience standpoint, you know, when they're done looking at those terms, they just close out that screen, that web browser, or they go back to the membership site.
Okay. And you were saying that the terms of sale or terms of purchase and terms and conditions need to be a separate link on the footer?
Separate link and not on the footer. Terms of purchase, which are specific to the sale, and it depends. Like, I don't know how Mighty Networks does it. I know that Teachable, there's a couple ways you can do it. You can have a sale page on your website and then you use like a Zap. So you use Zapier to connect the sale. And what CRM are you using? Do you have an email database, email manager?
I'm all self-taught, so I haven't really messed with that too much. You mean like
Like
mail?
Aweber, you know, even some of the free ones. What are the oh my gosh, my brain is spacing out. Some of the low end, like free
MailChimp,
MailChimp.
MailerLite.
Exactly. Thank you.
I
Do
know
you have any of those, Tiffany?
I have MailChimp, but I don't use it that much. I'm still learning it.
That's okay. So you're going to want to turn one of those on in a hurry, right? The whole power of being online is that you want to be growing your own database and your list, because that becomes, first of all, you want to have your own community to communicate with, but that's the way that you create some continuity in developing your relationships, right? So for whatever it is you're creating. And that's a really easy thing to do. Like if you've got a landing page or an opt-in through your website, that's how you drop people into your database. You know, MailChimp, I know plenty of people who've built big businesses using even some of the free services. They don't segment their list, which is often what's missing from those, from like MailChimp or the other ones that are similar, like free services or $10 a month or something. But you can still communicate. You can still do a lot of work using them as a, you know, helping with your business emails. So, but the point about that is that wherever your online funnel is that sells people into your membership site, right? To your core.
I have a question about my campaign.
Emma?
I'm sending out.
Emma?
Okay.
Sorry, one
Sure.
second. Let me finish answering her question, and then we'll move to your campaign question real quick. Does that work? Tiffany, are you still with us?
I'm still here.
Okay, no worries. So wherever your terms of purchase are, I mean, wherever you're doing your online sales, right? So wherever your online sales funnel is, that's where you want your terms of purchase to show up.
My name is Emma, or Emma McKay, and the number is
here, just a second. I think that
OL494.
I'm just going to mute Emma real quick. I think she didn't realize that she wasn't muted. I was like, wait, is this a question for me? I think she's on the phone with Infusionsoft. Okay. So, so Tiffany, wherever your online sales are going to be occurring, your terms of purchase need to show up at or immediately before the point of sale. So for example, I don't know whether you're going to be having a sales page through Mighty Networks. I assume it probably has that functionality. Do you know?
You mean for them to pay?
Mm-hmm. And sign up? Is that through Mighty Networks?
Yes, they let you create the landing page, and it's using Stripe, I believe.
Perfect. Yeah, a lot of those use Stripe, sometimes PayPal. No, that's perfect. So, so Mighty Networks. So this will be two questions that you have for them. Where, and you'll just go look first at their functionality. Hopefully, they have a place for you to build in your terms of purchase. Sometimes you can enter them right inside of the platform, meaning they'll actually like have a box and say, what are your terms of sale, right? So you could put your terms of purchase right into a placeholder if they have a placeholder. Ideally, what you want from an online checkout standpoint is you want somebody to have to actively check a box that says, I have read and agree to the terms of purchase. Some people will just show a hyperlink, like by proceeding with the, you know, by proceeding to purchase this course, you agree to the terms of purchase. That's fine. Like you want that really conspicuously posted, but from a legal standpoint, the very best thing for them to do is to have to actively acknowledge it. So check a box or do that big scroll box that they have to scroll to the bottom of before they can check out. Those, again, are legal ways that you have achieved constructive notice of those legal terms. And without that, you cannot necessarily, and it needs to be trackable, which is why oftentimes I like to know the functionality built into some of these platforms because some are better than others. But you want to check, I would just like ping their help desk if it's not obvious, like how do you implement terms of purchase at the point of sale, at or immediately before. You don't want somebody being able to give you money without acknowledging ahead of time that they understood that there are terms in place that they agreed to. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And because the terms of purchase are specific to the sale, they only need to show up there. You don't need to confuse people with terms of purchase also down in a footer link, right? Because they only need to show up when somebody's actually making the sale.
Okay. And that's like the refund, like kind of like refund information as well?
Yes, it's going to have, yes, terms of purchase include addressing your refund policy. They're going to have disclaimers that are specific to whatever it is you're selling. They're going to have, you know, limitations of liability around what you're doing. Like there's actually a lot that should show up in that document, but it includes your refund policy language. Yes.
And I did have one more question. Sorry, I hope I can.
That's all right. Great questions.
As far as like the wording of, you know, these policies and terms and conditions, does it really matter? Is it like, do you have to actually use like fancy legal words that people can't understand, or are you able to like, what's the word?
Yes, I mean, great question, and you're going to hate the answer, which is it depends. It depends on what you're doing. It depends on how clear your language is. Like, no, you know, people obviously don't have to use attorneys. I mean, they do it all day long and either plug in their own language or they just don't have language. I think the question is, you know, from a risk perspective, what type of risk do you face, you know, and tell me what you're teaching in your online course.
It's actually a variety of things. So I'm teaching like design tutorials, a little bit of my art knowledge, as well as just general like social media advice and business advice based on how I run my business as far as time management and that kind
Got
of.
it. Okay, so it is in the business advice world. Yeah. So
That kind of ties into it.
what was that?
A little bit on mindset as well.
Yep. All very correlated. No, understood. So, you know, the answer is, in an ideal world, every person that is building a small business would have, you know, again, in an ideal world, would have the resources to work one-on-one with an attorney and make sure that they've got documentation that fits their business and really will serve them well. Absent that, you know, the biggest thing that you can try to and the biggest thing that I care about is that people understand where they're getting their documents from and whether they're a fit. So, for example, you know, getting them from a friend in business, you know, the number of times that I've had people show up with legal problems and I start to dig into like where their documentation came from, it wasn't, Tiffany said Fiverr. You really have to understand where they come from. I've worked with people who've gotten into big trouble and I asked them about their legal documents and they said, oh, my web designer plugged these in. And I'm like, oh my heavens, does your web designer practice law? Like, what's happening here? Like, don't allow people that should not be putting your legal documents in place, put your legal documents in place, right? And yes, I mean, to the extent that you're doing them yourself, be really, really clear. Clear and simple language works fine. But don't make the mistake of thinking that that's sufficient if there's other legal needs that really should be addressed, which usually there are in the course of online sales and protecting your intellectual property. You know, a big part of what people don't realize is that the contractual terms that you put in place around your website actually do a tremendous amount of work towards protecting your IP, which is usually where people end up having the most heartache. Is they launch a course or program, they get really good at teaching something, and then they have people ripping it off, duplicating it, copying their course or program elsewhere online, and they didn't have any legal terms in place around that. And so it's, you know, just understand where you're getting your legal terms from if you are looking, you know, anywhere else other than working directly with a lawyer on creating them. But you know, the goal through my secondary business, because I live in both worlds, understand that I am a traditional license, like I have a legal practice based here in Seattle, Washington, and I have an online business, Legal Website Warrior, which is an online legal information and education business that sells templates. Part of what I do through that business is compete with my other business, right? And the reason being is that I understand not everybody can get their legal needs met by working one-on-one with an attorney. I get it. It's the whole reason I created a second business, is as an alternate way to meet the needs of people who have legal needs that are not being met in the traditional legal industry. But because my niche is so small, so I work with coaches, consultants, online educators, speakers, and authors, people who have very similarly situated businesses. They're basically publishing information in a way, in a variety of ways through their businesses, right? And sharing services based on proprietary information that they've developed, like a body of work that they've created. And so, you know, the thing that I care a lot about is that for for the templates that I've developed and built, that one, they're created for a niche. They're created to, in my opinion, work very well right out of the box, even if somebody cannot afford to have them modified or drafted by one-on-one by an attorney. And for people that are in the niche that I serve, I've worked with literally hundreds and hundreds and thousands of of entrepreneurs that are doing very similar things in their businesses. And so I've seen the way the inside of all these businesses run, which is also why I have a lot of confidence in delivering templates that are really a fit to serve the people that I work with. So, you know, that's why I really care, Tiffany, that people have tools that work for them. And so, you know, you're welcome to obviously check out any of my templates in my online store. The links are already shared in the chat, or get in touch if you want a referral. If you, Tiffany, where are you based? Did I ask you that already? Where are you at?
I'm in Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Okay, because the other thing I can do is I belong to all sorts of legal listservs, and I'm always happy to reach out and find referrals to people as well. And sometimes they're successful, sometimes depending on where people are at in the United States, I'm not able to come up with one. But that's another way that I serve people, is connecting them to somebody who might be a fit for their business if they want to work with somebody locally.
Thank you.
Yes, you're so welcome. Good luck. Any other questions that I can help you with?
This is actually a really embarrassing question. It probably sounds really bad, but a lot of, like, I get a lot of inspiration from like other websites and stuff, not necessarily like copying,
Mm-hmm.
kind of just seeing how, maybe like a business model or something that someone.
Totally observing what other people are doing in the marketplace.
Right. So I have found a couple websites where I've viewed their terms and conditions just for my own sake, trying to learn them. As far as the wording and like what I should include. And I have found some that I feel like would work very well for my business. Are terms and conditions also copyrighted? Like, not that I'm trying to like copy and paste someone's thing, but.
Yes. Great question. I'm glad you're thinking about this, because yes, the answer is just like any other work that gets posted online. If somebody else created it and you didn't pay for it and you don't have a license to use it, you can't use it. Right? So a couple things in that scenario. One is that they have either paid a company that provides a license to use that language, right? So, which means that you could not only be infringing on that business's rights, but also another business rights who actually created the document and is providing the license. So it's kind of a double whammy. And two, so you should know, for example, like I work with a lot of high profile clients, and so not only do I help them in tracking down infringements of the content that they create, but the number of times I have had to track down infringers who have just stolen legal documents off of one of my clients' website that I drafted for them and just duplicated it, copied it, like 100% copied it, just plugged in their own business stuff. I've had to track these folks down around the world, and there have been many. I actually have a full-time service that runs for me all over the web, tracking people who take my work. And so people get, you know, contacted all the time based on that exact infringement. So I'm so glad you're asking the question in advance, because basically the rule across the board for online work is if you did not personally create it, you know, and you don't own copyright to it, and you did not pay somebody for a license to use it, you can't use it. You can't take it or copy it or use it. So it's a great question, because a lot of people end up not asking the question at the right time, and they make that mistake thinking like, oh, nobody cares about this. But the reality is that somebody does. Whoever took the time to create that probably cares about it. So we shouldn't really take any of that if we don't directly have written consent to do that.
That's good to know. Yeah, I've kind of been looking at people's terms and conditions to figure out like what like sections I need to have, like, okay.
Yep.
Policy and disclaimer and all that stuff. So I'm just kind of
no, it's true, and it's a bit of work. I one time got contacted by a woman who, I couldn't believe it. She's finally thrown in the towel. She's like, Heather, I'm not even joking when I say that I have spent like 30 hours this week trying to put together my own documentation. I'm like, I understand. It is a bit of work. And she's like, I give up. I thought I could do it, and I'm not doing it anymore. Can I just pay you to do it? So the reality is people do try that, and it can be a frustrating exercise because, again, the concern is that unless you have been through that before, unless you have legal knowledge, like you don't know what you don't know. And so people can make simple mistakes that cost them a lot in their business. But it's a good question, and you're asking it at the right phase. So good work. You're thinking about all the right things. All right. Any other questions? Great question, Tiffany. And let me scroll down. Make sure I'm not missing any chat. Sometimes this chat goes away. All right, Emma, no worries. We'll catch you on another call. Any other questions for people that are on? So Dawn, Larissa, Tiffany, Stacy, and then Jay. Any other questions that you have today?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
About the LLC you were talking about doing first for our business.
Yep.
Now, is that another portion that I should go to a lawyer, or is there like online services, like say,
great question. Yes.
That are reputable that I could use to register an LLC?
Absolutely. So surprisingly, starting a business is not terribly challenging. Like, yes, in the ideal world, everybody has a great budget and you just go hire an attorney to do this for you because it's a hassle, right? But truthfully, starting an LLC looks very similar state to state. And usually what that process is you can go, so you're in Texas, you'd go to the corporations division, and I could probably Google it right here, for the state of Texas. They're going to have links online. So corporations, Texas, or you can also just Google Secretary of State, right? So it's all through the Secretary of State. Here's your business services. Right? And then entity business startup formation, right? So you just follow the link, selecting a business structure, right? If you already know what you want to create, you can literally just get online, follow the links, and let me see if they have, usually you can access the forms right from the Secretary of State in any given state. And what that looks like is filling it out. They're going to ask you for some initial information. They're going to ask you about your contact information, etc. Now, some people might need some additional strategy. So for example, certain states will allow the founders to protect their home mailing address. Other states don't. You have to file that information. And so it isn't a one size fits all from the standpoint of starting a business, because people have different concerns. If you're not concerned about disclosing, some personal contact information, then, you could probably do this process yourself without a lot of heartache, because it's really just about filling out some simple forms, paying the filing fee. And let me see if they have what your filing options are. So payment methods, it looks like you can do online. Fax filing, they have expedited service. I'm not seeing if what the filing fee is, but if you probably spent some time hunting around the site, they're going to give you all that information. In a lot of states, it can be, some states it's like $50. Other states like $200, $250 is more of the norm for most states. It's the filing fee that you pay along with your initial paperwork. Oftentimes at the point of formation, they will also have you file your initial annual report. So you can save yourself the hassle of having to do that like a couple months later, because usually it has to be filed within a certain time frame of forming the business. But then it's going to be, you're going to get a reminder every year thereafter to file your annual report. The thing that comes next that a lot of people miss and they don't think about is getting their because you file your articles of formation, right? Your articles of organization for an LLC, but then you also have to have your operating agreement. To actually complete the formal setup, you have to have what's called an LLC operating agreement. That's not a document that you file with the state. You have to create it, you have to date it and sign it, but you keep it internally. It's the rules that says, here's how this business is being run, right? Here is the operating agreement. Here's how decision-making is happening. Here's how, we're approaching the management of the business. So all of that gets put into your operating agreement. And a lot of people, if they do kind of more of a DIY approach online, they'll miss putting in place that operating agreement. Now, yes, you can find templates, right? LegalZoom has them. Those templates, for any of what I call the big box legal services that are kind of DIY services, just keep in mind that, those are really designed for the business world at large, right? I have also set up a single member LLC operating agreement template that I sell out of my online store. So I'll repost the link. You can go to this individual template. The thing that is fine, so I totally get that people cannot afford always to have an attorney draft a custom operating agreement for them. That's okay. But where I would point out that you absolutely need to have legal help is if you grow your business and you are doing a couple things. One, you're either getting outside funding or you are adding a business partner. I would absolutely take your operating agreement to an attorney that's practicing law in your state and have them update it, right? Have them create an agreement that is a fit for your business based on its growth. Because if you're involving somebody else's money or a new business partner, the way that you manage your business is going to be different, and you will need an operating agreement that reflects that. But in the meanwhile, like I recommend my LLC operating agreement all day long to people who are just starting out themselves. They need to have a basic understanding of how they're running their business. Right? I can't hold out that it's going to be perfect for every state because I don't practice law across state lines. Like, this is a template that I sell. But if you were to add a business partner or get outside funding or make some other decision that really drastically changes your business, I'd want to see you getting custom one-on-one legal support for that upgrade. Does that make sense?
No, totally. Appreciate it.
Good. Well, I'm glad that was helpful. Any other questions?
Hi, Heather, it's Jay.
Hi, Jay. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you? I felt so guilty with so much going on. Everybody's got simultaneous live casts going on. It's maddening, but and it's all good, and that's a frustrating part.
It's a good problem to have if you're feeling frustrated by an overwhelming amount of support, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We need to clone ourselves, but anyway.
Yes.
So I'm at a critical point because I was in New York City for 34 years, and I'm setting up new entities in another state. And this discussion has been extremely helpful because you're raising up all kinds of issues that I don't want to make any mistakes out of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like something very simple as like if I'm doing online consulting and I don't have, I feel like I need to set up new entities before anything, in order to receive funds from anyone.
Yes.
And having that in place.
Yes. Well, and I'm glad that that's your takeaway because and I don't know if you've been through any of my other trainings, Jay, but like Dawn, who had been exposed to a training that I did inside of Lewis Howe's Insider Circle, it's based on what I call my 5-bucket framework. The very first bucket is business entity. It is around setting up a formal business structure for your business that's registered with the state, because the sole reason for that is to let people know. And when I say people, I mean let your clients, let the government, let the IRS know my business is over here, my personal assets are over here. And if you're a sole proprietor and you don't have a business entity set up, you and your business are one and the same. You exist in the same place, and from the perspective of the IRS, from the perspective of the courts or the client, if you were to end up in a battle with a client, your personal assets are on the line for any liability that you bring into your life through your business. And it is just not a good place to be. To me, it doesn't even really matter what business you're in. Business brings more liability into our lives for all of us, essentially. There'd be very rare circumstances that I wouldn't encourage somebody to start with a business entity. And the other reason that I'm starting to talk about more, but is really like a side benefit of going and doing the work of setting up a business entity, is it literally makes you, like, it's a mindset shift. It's the difference between kind of dipping your toe in the water versus saying, like, I'm in, this is my business, I've created a structure around it, I'm treating it like a business. Really changes the mindset that you have and the way that you show up in business. That is really a fun perk, because a lot of people don't anticipate that even taking that simple step of creating a business entity shifts the relationship that they have to their business. So,
I totally agree with you. And I'm a paralegal, so I come from that background.
Totally.
I have that caution. So a lot of people that I respect that are like encouraging people that are starting out to start their own business and get clients, either I'm not hearing it they're not mentioning it, like just because it's another time consuming thing before they can create income, but it covers them.
Yeah. No, it's true. And it's, for the visual, when I go through my training, the thing that I want people to visually understand is your business entity is the foundational piece of your business. So literally think of it as like a big block, like a wooden block or metal, like whatever is the most solid in your mind. It's the foundation, and your actual business, whatever it is you're doing through your business, I think of as a piece of machinery, right? Nuts and bolts and gears that are operating like a big piece of equipment on top of that foundation. So that's the way that I think about like the things that we actually do in our business, is it's like a piece of machinery. And that's what contracts covers, right? Bucket number 2 is all about contracts. Contracts covers the daily things that we do in our business, while a business structure is the foundation of our business. And it's because of that liability conversation that I already touched on. So you want to absolutely keep any business liability separate. And especially if you're in the consulting world. Jay, remind me, what is it that you consult on?
Well, I consult, and I'm not marketing myself because I'm developing a program so that I
Okay.
entity first, but I also have an offline business. So I want to create a regular entity just as a business entity to receive funds, and also a nonprofit, but to complement my online business. And I want everything to be aligned with each other.
Totally. Yeah. Well, and for people in the consulting world, like, we have Larissa, who is essentially in that world, and I'm sure others, Dawn does creative services, but a lot of people that I work with are in the coaching or consulting world, where they're literally spending a huge percentage of their time giving advice to people, like in one area of life or another. And when you're doing that, you are automatically creating a certain amount of liability in your life. And I would absolutely, for any person in that scenario, want them to first have a business entity, a business structure in place, and then proceed with launching their services. It puts you in a much better position from a liability perspective. It's not always feasible. I get that. I totally get that. But for most people, I'd want it to be done in the right order, for sure.
Yeah, no, thank you for this. I'm sure you're already working on it, is figuring out how to streamline the process, because, people want people to sign up for their programs right away and get income right away, especially someone starting out, but they can't neglect or ignore this step. So I'm sure you're working on.
They can't. But here's the other thing I will say is I want legal stuff to complement the way people are in business. I never like for it to interfere with actually doing business. And so I will say that if you've got people that are ready and willing to sign up, like, sign them up. And excuse me. I mean, if you can afford to wait until a business entity is created, that's fine. Usually it's a much shorter process than people think. Like in Washington, I could file paperwork for a client and it would be processed in a couple of days. So some people don't understand how quickly, especially if your state has an option to expedite. Like here, it's like $20 more. Every day, all day long, I'd pay that $20 fee to have a business set up in 2 days, then wait for 2 weeks, especially if you're in the instance of wanting to enroll clients right away, right? But the other thing you can do is if you just are not in the place to pay the 2 or 3 or whatever, however many $100 it is, and usually it's not much higher than that in most states. If you're really not in a position to go through that yet, by all means, launch your business, enroll some clients, and then the first funding that you get, put towards properly structuring your business, put towards some of the essential supports that people often ignore. They want to focus on marketing and sales, and all of that is super important. But at the end of the day, that stuff doesn't matter if you lose everything because legally you didn't take care of yourself, right? So, I would just say be really mindful about, enrolling clients and then allocating those resources towards setting up a proper business the right way.
So that said, and thank you, if someone does want to sign on immediately, do you give them a sort of retroactive agreement?
Well, you can, and you can also just let them know up front, like, look, I'm in the process of setting up a business. Right now, my contracts are in my individual name, but once my business is formally set up, I would like us to revise this so that it reflects my business entity name, right? And that doesn't necessarily eliminate all of the liability, but I've worked with plenty of entrepreneurs who partway through the delivery of a coaching program or service or product actually got their business entity set up. And then they just sent out a new round of agreements and just had a real conversation with folks like, hey, would you sign the new version of the agreement? It now, identifies my business as the provider of the services because that's accurate. So, it's just, I encourage people to be really real and open with folks, but especially in the context of updating agreements, because you need client cooperation to be able to do that.
Yes, thank you very much. I wanted to ask a question that other people could relate to and not something terribly specific.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Great question. All right. Anybody else? These are great questions today, you guys.
I like this idea of the LLC, but in Canada, we don't have anything like that. It's just incorporation, and I've looked into it, but it's a lot of money, and I know it involves like a lot more paperwork and like monthly reports and documentation and stuff like that, which is why I haven't gone there. So I don't know. If
No, and I understand. I totally understand that. The concept is the same. I think the pathway for getting there is a little bit different. And you're right, because I've worked with other clients in Canada that there isn't an equivalent to the LLC. The reality is that from the taxation standpoint, I'm not sure how it works in Canada. Even as a single member LLC here in the United States, most of the taxation actually occurs at the individual level because an LLC is considered a pass-through entity. So you can make, the good part about having an LLC is it's a very flexible model here. You can make a tax election to be treated differently. So for example, if you don't want to be taxed at the individual level with pass-through income, you can make an election to have your LLC be taxed as an S Corp. That's actually how you create an S Corp, is you either initially set up an LLC or a C Corp, and you make the tax election to be treated as an S Corp. Or you can, if you're a small business, and let's say that you, like I work with a lot of people that as well have a separate job and they're starting their own business, but they don't really need to pull money out of it yet. It might be the right choice to actually make a tax election to be treated as a C Corp, because you can hold money in the corporation and not have to take out income, which also means you don't have to be taxed on that income in that particular year. So there's different reasons why you might make a certain tax election, but that is one of the advantages that the LLC has here. I don't know, Larissa, if in Canada you can change the tax election status. I don't have that knowledge, but where are you in Canada? Did you tell me the city?
Ontario.
I could probably get a referral for you if you were interested in exploring options, including, financially, when it makes sense to go that route, because being in Seattle, there's a lot of cross-border people here, and I regularly get referrals for clients in Canada.
Well, that'd be great. I'd like to look into it and have a better understanding of what my options are.
Okay, no, that'd be great. So pop me an email to info@legalwebsitewarrior.com and just remind me where you are at in Canada, and I'll reach out for a business attorney referral for you.
Okay.
For everybody else that still is on the call, I'm in the process of creating actually a new checklist that is all about like the legal tools, legal contracts that you can use in your business depending on what you do. If you're interested in that, pop your email into the chat box, and I'll just do a little collection of emails each time that I do one of these live calls, and then I'll follow up with that little checklist once it goes live, if you're interested in that. And this is just will help people kind of walk through like the services that they offer, what they're doing online, and kind of just have a direct link of like, oh, here's what I might need from a legal perspective. But it gives people a way to, like, Dawn and I were talking about at the beginning of this call, to start to analyze like, what am I doing in my business and what might I need to protect that area of business. All right, any other questions, you guys? Perfect. I see a couple emails coming in, so I will grab those and then I'll send out that checklist for free for anybody that's on the call. So just hang tight, and once I have that ready, probably in a couple days, I'll just send that out. But any other questions while we're still live? Otherwise, I'll wrap up here shortly, but great questions today. Anything else? Going once? Going twice? You're welcome. Thank you, everybody. Great to have you today. Good luck. I know you're all up to great things. I know it's such an interesting time to be building our businesses, but I'm so glad to be able to be in conversation with you, and pop on in the coming weeks if you have any additional questions. Okay? All right. Thanks, you guys. I'll sign off for the day. Have a great week. Bye-bye.